No. It's Nicole Kidman. Those two people are absolutely interchangeable to me. They might as well be the same person.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bernie, once we put together our official set sometime in the future, we're gonna put every single one of these giant Funko. I don't know if you can
LeBrons?
see this.
Yeah, I can see it. Your Funko
We're
LeBron.
we're gonna put all of them. I'm gonna get all. I got the Giannis one sitting out in my room. I'm getting them all. Allen Iverson's up next.
Alrighty. I'm just gonna wait a little bit before we get started. Hopefully everyone is having a good Sunday morning or afternoon wherever you are at. I do apologize that I'm looking like an absolute clown right now with these headphones on. They're just so huge, and I usually like to just use my AirPods because they're tiny and discreet, but it is what it is. We just got to make do with what we have. Obviously today we got Brad and Pete on the show. How you guys doing?
Excellent.
Doing well. Ready to talk some hoop.
Yeah, definitely going to be talking some hoop. Definitely going to be talking about a lot of different things. So today's topics that we have today, we're obviously going to talk about Pete's segment, which he came up with, which is rate the record. So we're going to go over the records, I believe, Pete, and just figure out, how do we like it? Do we not like it? And will it last? I think it's kind of the
pretty much. Yeah, one way or the other, good or bad, will it last?
Obviously, then we're going to talk a little bit more about the Bob Myers expiring contract. He hasn't gotten a contract extension just yet. And this could be the closing window for the Warriors, even though they absolutely destroyed the Celtics last night. And then we're going to open up the MVP conversation again. I was kind of perusing on some websites, and I got to shout out Cuffs the Legend for this one. So I gotta talk some MVP talk and really think about why some people have not entered in the conversation. So, with that being said, hopefully you guys are enjoying, like I said, your Sunday afternoon, Sunday morning, wherever you are at. Please remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button if you're new to the channel. Again, all that stuff helps out the channel tremendously. It helps Brad, Pete, and I kind of grow this channel to where we want it to be. Again, we want this channel to be something where the fans can come in, chime in, and talk about what they need to talk about, and really talk some hoops. I think that, there's a missing space for it, so I hope you guys are ready to join in and talk about that space. But with that being said, let's start with this Bob Myers story, because I feel like this one, I think it's big, and I think a lot of people aren't really talking about it as much because obviously, it's boring talking about GMs or coaches, basically anybody that's not the players. But here's what the story goes on to say about Bob's expiring contract without an extension. The Golden State Warriors are the NBA's defending champion, and they won the 4 out of the last 8 NBA finals, which is actually crazy to think about. But the team's architect is running out this season without a new deal. Warriors president of basketball operations Bob Myers is on an expiring contract, and the teams haven't been able to come to an agreement extending his deal. Myers refused to discuss the status beyond saying, "My entire focus is on the season." Golden State owner and CEO Joe Lacob said, "We love Bob and hope he's here for a long time, aka we're probably not going to re-sign you again." Myers was originally hired as an assistant GM, and of course we obviously know his past. So with that being said, both Brad and Pete, is this a big deal that Bob Myers is basically, I would say, out the window? Unless, there's a contract extension coming down the line. I don't foresee that happening anytime soon. So I think this is his final hurrah. Is this a big deal if Bob Myers leaves?
Yeah, I'd say it's a big deal. It's pretty much like Pete said the other day in our group chat, like we're kind of seeing the end of the dynasty of the Warriors. It's like their last dance, And with Bob Myers, the real issue there is the reason he's not getting an extension is probably because the rosters he's built haven't been that good since Jerry West left. I want to say like Jerry West was like the shadow GM, just secretly making all the good signings. Yeah,
Jerry West is the most underrated part of this dynasty.
Exactly. And you can see it with how he built the Clippers roster full of good, talented players. Even without their 2 stars, they're able to stay afloat usually. And then with the Warriors, ever since he left, Bob Myers signings have been terrible. At one point, Dragon Bender was on the team. Like, what are we doing here, guys? Like, if you just look at those rosters since he left, it is bad. That's why, and his draft picks, like, can you imagine if the Warriors had Franz Wagner instead of James Wiseman? They had to send their number 2 pick down to the G League. That is bad. That's like really
LaMelo.
bad. Or if they had LaMelo, yeah, someone who was the more obvious choice, even like that's just he's a dream fit next to Stephen Clay.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think I remember seeing that alert for that story and being like, oh, this is probably what was going to happen considering all the rosters he's built that have been terrible in the last like 4 years, and even
Yeah.
this roster is underwhelming. Should have retained an important vet like GP2 or Otto Porter Jr.
Yeah, this one's pretty tough. I actually kind of have a little, leave it to me to have a theory about something. I mean, that's kind of what I do around here. That's what that's all I'm good for around this channel. Regardless, my point here, I actually kind of get the suspicion that, based on Joe Lacob, the owner of the Warriors, what we know about him is he is always trying to put together a championship roster. That's what we've seen since he's taken over this team. Bernie, I'm getting an echo from you. Sorry about that, brother. So with Joe Lacob, I think he's literally always trying to compete, always wanting to put the best team out that's possible for him. How he does it is not necessarily the point, but that is the goal, right? So I think one of the things that's interesting about this season is that all of these end dates are aligning for all the big pieces other than Steph Curry, right? Like Steph Curry, they know it doesn't matter with Steph. We're keeping Steph until eternity. Like that's our guy, right?
Right.
But the players, Draymond, Clay, and then you have the GM Bob Myers. And I have a strong suspicion that this is like the ultimate wait and see approach, right? Leave it on all of these parties involved to either do something with it or not and see what happens at the end of the season. And I don't really necessarily think it's guaranteed that Bob Myers doesn't come back, because it isn't like he hasn't led them to 4 championships in a certain way. I don't necessarily think he's responsible for it. Like you're saying, Brad, I think Jerry West has a lot to do with the personnel that they've had, and in terms of their main players, Jerry West is the guy, right? That is kind of one of the things that he'll never get the credit for that he deserves. But I do think there's a chance Bob Myers stays. But this is certainly important because it shows that it's not as simple as, you've won in the past, we're keeping you indefinitely, which shows a certain level of like we're pushing forward regardless. If you want to grab the reins and keep your job, go make a trade, go make some deals and get us another championship, or get us in contention at least. But I do think last night is going to throw some people off the scent of this Warriors team. I don't know about you guys. I know the Celtics really, they dumped the bed, so to speak.
Yeah. I mean, we were without 2 good role players that could have helped this team. Not trying to make excuses.
They didn't have Wiggins, bro. Come on.
Yeah, but they didn't have Robert Williams or Al Horford. That's a huge blow to the Celtics. Not saying that it's like the biggest deal, but it's still.
Well, one thing too, Bernie,
Could have been
in
a
your
win
favor.
for them, though.
One thing in your favor, Bernie, the Warriors literally were sitting guys leading up until this game. Getting their main players rest leading up into this. And that is not what the Celtics have been doing. The Celtics have been going balls to the walls every single game so far this season. All their players are playing. So I do think a lot of it has to do with just like how well rested the players were in a certain sense. And I'm not going to say that that's all JT was not good last night. Tatum was really poor in a lot of ways. Like that, I'm not making any excuses, qualms about it. They blew it. They should have won regardless. But it's not like they were both coming into it fully on the same level prepared. I don't know. I still have my same suspicions about both of these teams. I think the Celtics are the best team in the league on a night in, night out basis. And I think the Warriors can compete with the best on a night in, night out basis, but they're old. Like they're old. You are not going to get that level of Clay every night. We've seen it all season. It happens every so often. Most nights, that is not what Clay is giving you right now. So I do think it's one of those things where they just played their absolute premium Warriors brand of basketball, and the Celtics just didn't have it last night. So 7-game series, I still think the Celtics got the Warriors numbers this season, personally.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest thing to me about this story between Bob Myers, I think it's between the owner and Bob Myers. It's your classic case and classic story of one guy wants the credit for what happened for this generation, and the other guy wants the credit. I mean, it's just so eerily similar to the Bulls situation with their owner and their GM. You know, a lot of people have their gripes about the GM. I can't remember the dude's name for the Chicago Bulls back in the day.
Jerry Krause?
Jerry Krause, I think. Yeah. Jerry Krause and the owner, like, those two always kind of butted heads. And I just feel like maybe these two butted heads a lot towards the later end. I mean, I'm sure, you know, once Kevin Durant left, I'm sure that Bob Myers and Joe Lacob were just at each other's throats at times and just, you know, very passive aggressive to one another because, you know, they didn't think, you know, sometimes you think you're not going to win another championship again when you get rid of a talent like Kevin Durant at that point. And, you know, you have all the faith in the world, but there's times where, you know, these organizations are kind of just like, well, how did we just let a super talented player like Kevin Durant leave? Like, that has to be on you. You have to do better at your job to keep our guy here. And I think, to me, I think that's what my, you know, obviously no insider information, just, you know, balls to the walls, conspiracy theorist, just like Pete over here with his theories, right? I just think that, to me, I think just these two, it's just an ego trip. I think it happens in every sport. It happens in every organization. There's one guy who thinks he deserves the credit more than the other guy. And I think that that's what we have here. It's a classic case of it. So I'm curious to see if Bob Myers becomes a free agent and signs somewhere else, where that place would be, and you know, how that place would end up becoming. Because I think the thing that will hurt Bob Myers the most is if he goes to a situation where he already has a superstar or someone that's already predetermined. So, like, if he went to the Orlando Magic, I don't think he would get as much credit as I would say maybe if he went to like maybe even, well, I guess he wouldn't go to Utah because Danny's there. Trying to think of which team?
The Lakers.
It's not a bad bet.
I mean, Lakers would be a great shout. I mean, I'm sure he would do a much better job than Rob Pelinka.
Dude, I don't know. Because I think one thing is, like, he hasn't necessarily done a very good job in recent years. Like, I think that's one of the things about Bob Myers that gets swept under the rug with this team. And maybe that is where this drama is coming from. Like, if you look at how well positioned they were after Kevin Durant left the team in terms of rebuilding with the picks that they had established, they made that excellent move with the Timberwolves to take D'Lo, turn him into Wiggins and picks. And then you end up with the second overall pick, and you still have all these guys. They have the one down year where, you know, everybody's hurt. They're one of the worst teams in the league. They were perfectly positioned to go grab somebody that could have changed their destiny, right? And, you know, Brad, you brought it up. If they had gotten somebody like Franz Wagner, if they had gotten somebody like LaMelo, like specifically LaMelo, like, I think the Wiseman pick is the beginning of the end in terms of this relationship in Bob Myers' tenure, as far as, like, this guy, is he really that great? Because in recent years, the drafting has been pretty atrocious. If you look at, like, how much they need help right now, and you have Moses Moody, Kuminga, and you have James Wiseman. Those dudes are essentially, at this point, all wasted picks. Whether or not they're actually as bad as they've appeared to be at, you know, at certain stretches this year, or the fact that they just can't get on the court, isn't really the point. They need to be on the court, but they can't get out there.
Yeah.
That reflects on Bob Myers, I would say. You know?
And really quick, Pete, I mean, there's this, and I'm going to show the audience, like, this is an article from a year ago, maybe a year ago, November 12th, 2020. Thompson, Warriors' number 2 pick is the most important in Bob Myers' era.
Yeah.
And,
wow.
Yeah, I mean, it just kind of goes to show. I mean, the article talks about James Wiseman to trade down, LaMelo Ball or Anthony Edwards. I mean, if you even would have taken Anthony Edwards or LaMelo Ball, I think he would be in a much better situation. Because, I mean, then you have the next generation of players. I mean, that's the thing that, you know, whether we like or dislike the, you know, and I know that this is, well, I guess we could go Spurs, right? Because Spurs did a great job of this. Well, to a point. I mean, every dynasty ends. But they kind of went from like that David Robertson, Tim Duncan era to then going to the Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker, and then from there they went to the Kawhi Leonard, Danny Green, Patty Mills, and so on and so forth. And it's the same thing as the Patriots in the NFL when they had Tom. I know Tom Brady being the main focal point is
Steph
the reason.
Curry, though. I mean,
Yeah.
Steph is the common denominator. He's the Tim
He
Duncan,
is.
he's the Tom Brady.
He is, but the thing is like after Steph Curry goes, who's like the next person in line for the Warriors? I mean, other than you extended Jordan Poole because you believe in him like that. Do you believe in Wiseman? Do you believe in, I love Kuminga, but do you believe in Kuminga and Moody, like those guys after Steph Curry leaves, after Green leaves, after Thompson leaves? Can that team win an NBA championship?
I would say they don't believe in Wiseman at all, especially since they sent him to the G League. But I think they believe in Kuminga a little more, and he's shown some flashes like lately of him being a really, you can see what he can be, like a really, really good defender, and he's attacking the hoop. We all saw that dunk on Tatum last night.
Oh yeah, Kuminga. I mean, Kuminga's legit. I do think it's important. Like, why are these guys not getting more minutes on a team that's so old and in need of so much? Bernie, we talked about this a lot earlier this season, and I think actually it was a streamer you were here too, Brad. I think my biggest thing with the Warriors this season is kind of a reflection of their bigger problem, and it's they want their cake and they want to eat it too, so to speak. You're trying to play both sides of the game and sit on both sides of the fence, where you have this old core, you want to pay them and keep them happy, but then you have all these young guys, but they don't really play the balance very well. They don't necessarily all get the right amount of minutes. And I'm not saying I know, I'm not a coach. I don't know anything about that. I'm just saying from my average viewer perspective, they have so many flaws and holes in their night-to-night game. To have these young dudes just sit on the bench that have value to other people I think that's a failure in management. Like, you have to do something with all the things you have. And maybe that's what it comes down to, because we know Joe Lacob wanted them to go get Kevin Durant this summer. We know that. Joe Lacob even was out in the news saying that, in other words, right?
Mm-hmm.
If Bob Myers is the reason they're pushing back and holding on to people like Wiseman, Kuminga, Moody, no matter what you think of those guys, Joe Lacob is going to end up being proven right, because Kevin Durant is better than those guys. The sum of those parts don't equal half of Kevin Durant. Mm-hmm. So if the holdup is a manager, or the GM, in this case, Bob Myers, saying, no, we'll go with my plan, it is a huge failure on his part to put Steph Curry in the best position to win a championship, because no matter how that Celtics game went, they're not necessarily like where they were last season. And I think that's pretty safe to say if you're watching this team most nights. Like, they're just not there. Like, they don't have all the parts necessary. And Jordan Poole, if that's your guy going forward, if that's the next star you want to put next to Steph Curry to win championships for a couple years down the road, I don't think that's going to happen with Jordan Poole. I'm sorry. I'm not the biggest Poole guy, but he's a pale imitation of somebody like Clay in terms of winning major basketball games. And I don't know. I don't want to get in deep water with a pool party, so to speak. But
wow,
you're in the shallow end of the pool party,
dude. I'm gonna end up getting drowned in the pool party if I don't watch my tongue.
Yeah. I mean, again, this is going to be a very interesting situation for it all to play out. We obviously don't know the whole story. There could be a lot of different things. And of course, when the 30 for 30 documentary comes out in 20 years, we will find out the real story about what happened with this whole situation. And even with the Warriors themselves, when Kevin Durant left, I'm sure a lot of fans are interested in that story. But let us know in the comment section down below, people. What do you guys make of the story? Do you guys think that Bob Myers is someone that you should extend? If you're a team that is looking for a GM, is he someone that your team should hire? Let us know in the comment section down below. And also let us know if you think the Golden State Warriors will win the championship this NBA season. Let us know in the comment section down below. And remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button if you're new to the channel. Again, all that stuff helps us tremendously. And we look forward to hearing what you guys have to say about this story. All right. Should we do rate the record, or should we go right into this MVP conversation? What's the?
Let's do the MVP segment quick, and then we can just go into the rate the record. That'll be our big finale.
All right. So I spurred this topic on because I was obviously perusing on the Twitter sphere, as I usually do late at night when I probably should be going to bed at times. And obviously I follow Cuffs to Legend. I think he's a great follow. If you guys don't know, obviously, someone that's very tight with LeBron James. And he kind of brought up a very interesting point, and I obviously want to give him credit for this topic, and that's of course the MVP conversation that is happening right now. Obviously, we talk about Luka, we talk about Giannis, we talk about Jokic, we even talk about Ja Morant. But one person that I feel like we don't talk about, and it's because for whatever reason we don't, but we need to start talking about the New Orleans Pelicans and Zion Williamson. I think he brought up some good points. I think that his biggest gripe with the media is that because Zion does not have the prettiest game in the world, I think he's like a 24-11 type of player, but his 24 points that he usually gets in a game, not the prettiest. It's not going to be the prettiest game. You're not going to be like, wow, this guy's crazy, unless he dunks the ball, obviously. I have to agree with him in a sense where right now the Pelicans are the number 1 seed in the Western Conference, which is amazing because we thought that they were going to be, we think they were top 6, right? That was kind of our.
I think we all ended up putting them in top 5.
Top 5.
It was a debate for a bit, but then we kind of all started to. I think Brad was the one that was the highest on him, right?
Brad was the highest on them. And obviously this team is playing like an absolute unit right now. I mean, they have so many great players led by a great leader in CJ McCollum, in my personal opinion. I mean, there's probably maybe
not been playing very well either. He's actually been pretty poor this season, but he's still good glue guy.
Great glue guy, good. I feel like just good all around type of dude. And to me, like when I look at this, like I think we should start putting Zion Williamson in the top 4 conversation for MVP. I think it's about time that he's entered in that point. For some reason, I think that a lot of people just forget about him because he's hurt, because of his weight, whatever the situation may be. It's time for Zion Williamson to be entering in the conversation for the most valuable player award. Guys, I know I went on a little monologue. I went on a soliloquy. Take it away. Does Zion Williamson deserve to be in the top 5 or at least top 4 of the MVP conversation?
This is a good question, Bernie. Once I guessed earlier before we started the stream, this was my final. I knew this was it. Once you said Cuffs, I was like, I guess this has got to be it. First off, before I get into my thing, R.I.P. Paul Silas. We actually didn't say that yet. I don't know if you guys saw that. Passed away.
Shoot. No.
They
I didn't see it.
Bob Ryan just reported that not that long ago. R.I.P. Absolute legend, Paul Silas. Tough year for NBA legends passing away. But getting into your question, Bernie, Zion Williamson. I couldn't agree more. I think Zion needs to be in the top 4 conversation for MVP. It's not even a question. If you're watching what this dude is doing, it's absolutely unstoppable when he is on the court. He is uncontainable in a way that I would say he's kind of in a territory, and hear me out, I would say there's 2 players that are like this in the NBA right now. LeBron used to be like this, not so much anymore, but he's still one of the top 10 best players in the league. That's not my point. It's just using their physicality to dominate the league, right? And I would say the 2 guys right now are Zion and Giannis. They're absolutely physically uncontainable by almost any player in the league. And I would push back on why the media isn't necessarily talking about him. I don't necessarily know if it's so much about his game. It's more that the MVP award is so narrative driven, and the media, the mainstream media in particular, in terms of like ESPN and Bleacher Report and these places, they're always, it feels like, 2 months behind in terms of like what the public consensus, or actually like what, not even public consensus, but what is actually being shown on the court. right?
Hmm.
And I feel like they're still caught in last year. They're in limbo of like, is this guy healthy? Is he in shape? And it's like, if you're watching, he clearly is. He's clearly not only in shape, but he looks better than he ever has, in my opinion. And
So true.
my biggest thing that I've seen with Zion that I loved, and this is a little controversial. I saw a lot of people get upset one way or the other. Of course, it's 2022. His huge dunk at the end of the Phoenix Suns game, which I want to hear both of your opinions on. I loved it. I absolutely loved it because that's exactly what we need to see from Zion, or that's what I've wanted to see from Zion. This absolute like, these are my guys. This is my team. I'm in New Orleans. I'm going to do whatever it takes to win, and I'm going to assert myself on the other team. And I think in terms of Phoenix, like if this was a playoff series, I feel like it would be a reflection of last year's, where Luka is dominating the Phoenix Suns and just asserting his will on them. Zion, I feel like could do the exact same thing to Phoenix. And there's a lot of people that were, including myself, I said my apologies to Phoenix a couple weeks ago. I still feel that way. I was wrong about them, but they're still the same team in a lot of ways. And I think when it comes to players like Zion, like Luka, like Giannis, they're going to be able to just dominate them mentally. And I love that it was this nail in the coffin. Like, I missed the playoff series last year. I'm here this year, and I'm fully engaged and locked in. But yeah, I agree. Here's my one thing. I still need to see more from Zion on defense. Like he's better than he's been in the past, but he's still not the defender that he could be physically. Like I think that when you look at like what Anthony Davis is doing, I would still have to put Anthony Davis ahead of him. And I know that that's not fair, and it kind of goes against some of my own personal MVP beliefs. I'll admit it. I'll admit it. I'm a team record kind of guy. I like team success in terms of MVP. But when it's so on the shoulders of one guy, like Luka in Dallas and like Anthony Davis, he has LeBron. But mind you, the rest of that team is trash. AD is just doing it on both sides. So I would give him the edge in terms of Western Conference MVP candidates. But yeah, Brad, what do you think? I think it's pretty interesting, especially because Brandon Ingram has been out this whole season practically.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree Zion deserves excuse me, some consideration. But like Pete said, it's a lot of narrative driven, like, by the media. It's kind of hard because there's no real definition for MVP. Like, is it what they said the criteria was with Jokic? Like, oh, all his teammates are out and he has them playing above their heads, like took them to the playoffs. Or is it the guy who's the best player on the best team? So with Zion, I mean, best record in the West, and he's the best player, so I definitely think he deserves some consideration. But I would agree, someone like AD, Giannis, maybe even Luka are ahead of him just because
I'd still say Tatum too.
Too. Yeah.
Tatum had a stinker last night, but Tatum's still my MVP.
I mean, Tatum is outplaying him on both ends, so it's like on both ends with a better record too. But I agree, Zion definitely, he should be in the conversation. His team is really deep though, like you have Trey Murphy going off the bench, you have Jose Alvarado outplaying CJ. Like that's crazy. They just extended CJ, and a kid who's on like a 4-year minimum contract is outplaying CJ. So that team is like legit one of the deepest teams in the league, which is why I was so high on them coming in. Mm-hmm. Like they don't need an MVP like dominant player like AD to be really good. They just need Zion to do his thing, and everybody else will plug in and fit in where they can, and they'll be a really good team. I would give him top 5 consideration, I guess.
He's at the bottom of my 5, but I agree. Because Brad, you hit the nail on the head. I think one thing that's going under talked about, and again, the same thing is true for Tatum in Boston. I would actually consider New Orleans and Boston the 2 deepest teams in the NBA. Like at every position, they have guys that don't even get minutes that are probably like a 6th or 7th best player on half the league teams in the league, right? Because you didn't even mention like Dyson Daniels, our guy, is kind of coming on. Like he was playing he's been playing some incredible defense as far as being a rookie guard. He is a guy for the future. I still am really high on Dyson Daniels, but this team is
Herb Jones
deep.
Has been out. Like
See, I mean, the one thing that goes in Zion's favor with this is that, like I said, Ingram's been hurt and also hasn't necessarily been his best self, even when he wasn't hurt. CJ McCollum has been, this is like one of CJ's worst seasons on the court, like just bar none. He's not been very good most games, which is tough, but it just shows again how deep they are, how many resources, because like Trey Murphy guy, that dude is legit. Like whatever he's going to end up being in a few years, I have no clue. He's kind of one of the hardest dudes to predict in terms of, is he going to actually be a superstar? He might be. I don't even know, because he has these flashes of like, this guy might be the best dude on the court right now, and
Bro,
he's
exactly.
20.
At this
That
point,
it's
sorry, I don't mean
insane.
to cut you off.
No, it's okay. It's insane to me how good he is, and he doesn't get talked about hardly at all. Like
I think he's making it like he's making Ingram more expendable the way he keeps playing.
I agree. Like
Because he
I don't
plays
know
better
if I do
defense
it
than
this
him.
year. I don't know if I do it this year, but if it doesn't go well for them in the playoffs or whatever, I don't think I don't think I'd be too upset if they started looking at Ingram as somebody they could go, package him and Valanciunas to go get some crazy center or something,
Yep. If Mikal Bridges drops 30 on Ingram's head again to win a series, I would trade him.
Or even go get Mikal Bridges, go do something like some guy like that, just an extra, like if they had another insane wing defender, who could give you, 20 points on most nights, like Brandon Ingram. I love Brandon Ingram. It's just almost, it's kind of the problem that this team has had for a couple of years now, even in Stan Van Gundy's season in New Orleans, when Zion was point Zion, showing everybody, like he was all NBA that season, in my opinion. There was people sleeping on him that year. He was insane, Zion. But the same problem was manifesting that year too, where Brandon Ingram and Zion's play styles don't always really align very well. So I don't know. I would rather keep Zion than Brandon Ingram, but Brandon Ingram is very good too. So there's a universe in which you need to start thinking about what you can get for him. And if the difference between getting somebody like Kevin Durant is including Brandon Ingram,
You gotta go for it.
I'm sorry, you got to go for it. Brandon Ingram is a great player, but he's not Kevin Durant.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think this is going to be a great season for the New Orleans Pelicans. They've obviously shown that they are really invested in this group. I'm excited to see them in the playoffs, because I think that's going to be their real test this year. I mean, last year I think was a test of like, okay, can this roster kind of hang with the big boys? And they've clearly shown that they can hang with them. And so, I think that this is going to be a situation where I can see the Pelicans really taking off here and, really dominating the rest of the league. And I could see them being in the top. They honestly could be in the top 3 seed if they wanted to, with their roster and the depth that they have.
I honestly think they're probably going to hold on to the 1. I really do. At the way it's going, I don't see, the West is so tight, and so many of the other good teams in the West are really truly dependent on like 1 or 2 guys staying healthy for the whole season. That's kind of one of the reasons I have to dip Zion down my list, is because he could miss like a month and this team could still rattle off wins pretty consistently. Like that's not the same for the Suns or, I mean, the Warriors. If they keep coming on, if Steph misses 3 weeks, that team's probably going to lose every game that he's out. Like that's not the same with the old Pelicans. So it's tough. We could just go right into our rate the record and use them first.
1 second. Let me read these comments and then we'll go right into it.
Go for
it. So Drunk, you've joined us now in the chat. How you doing, man? So Zion's dunk the other night was amazing. F the Suns. Ingram was so overrated to me, bro. Send Ingram to the Bulls for DeRozan. Y'all never fail to stream as soon as football starts. Straight savages. If I can get Durant for Ingram and whatever, that's no brainer. Durant is Ingram's father. I think that at the end of the day, I like the construction of this Pelicans roster. I know that a lot of people are gonna say like, oh, they like that's the thing that kind of frustrates me about fans sometimes. It's like this roster is pretty freaking good. I know that people are gonna say what they need to about guys like Brandon Ingram, like, oh, if it doesn't work out, but I mean, so far it's working, man. So like, there's no reason to kind of just like go on tangent or like, go to the NBA trade machine and start trading away guys that that they need
I
to.
wouldn't do it right now, Bernie. I just need to make that clear. I wouldn't do it right now. I'd keep Ingram. I would not mess with any of this roster. As far as I'm concerned, they have everything they need to win a championship. In my opinion, it's
I would
more.
move Devontae Graham, and that's it.
I would that. All right, Brad, you're totally right. Just send him any. Just get rid of him.
Yeah.
I'm not a big Devontae Graham guy in general. I think he's just not a winning player. That's me. I would give him away if I could.
Him and Jackson Hayes. If they could turn that into Miles Turner, they'd be cooking with grease.
I mean, they probably could and just send like 5 picks, or not even 5 picks. They could send like 2 picks and those 2 guys, and end up with Miles Turner or somebody like that. They should do something like that. I agree.
Mhm.
Get rid of those guys. But yeah, I wouldn't. The core guys for this team: Zion, CJ, Brandon Ingram. I would consider Alvarado a core guy as far as just what he brings in terms of the mentality. Of
Absolutely.
Mentality
the team.
monster.
And Trey Murphy, and then Dyson Daniels. Those 6 dudes, I wouldn't do anything with those guys. Everybody else, I would say it kind of depends on what the offer is and what's out there. Those guys, you have the makings of everything you need. Those guys are huge, versatile, and they can all score, like on any team. So I'd keep all those dudes. I wouldn't mess with it unless it just doesn't go well for them.
Yeah. So people let us know in the comment section down below. Obviously, Drunk showing us his opinion of what he thinks of this whole team. And let us know in the comment section down below, what do you guys make of the MVP race? Is Zion Williamson a top 5 MVP candidate? Let us know in the comment section down below. And now we're going to move on to Rate the Record. All right, Pete. This is your topic, so I'll let you introduce what you need to introduce.
All right, so like Bernie said, this is Rate the Record. Little segment I came up with where we're going to just look at every team's record so far. We'll just keep the New Orleans Pelicans as a good example here. The New Orleans Pelicans are 17-8. What we're going to do is, just have a little open discussion about each of the teams, as many as we can get to at least, and determine if the record is actually representative of the team. And it can be in either way. Is the record better than what they actually are? Is it worse than what they are? Or is it just right? Kind of like a Goldilocks type scenario, but for the old record of these teams. So let's start with the Pelicans. I think we pretty much all made our opinions pretty clear on them, so it's a good way to just get it out of the way.
Yeah.
They are 17-8, first seed in the Western Conference. I think it's super real. I think it's very, very real, and honestly, I could see it just continuing to stay that way, if not get better. I mean, it can't get better. They're the first seed, but you know what I mean. I think they're going to stay in the first seed for most of the season. I honestly don't know. The only team I think that could take the 1 seed from them is Memphis, and I think it has a lot to do with just the same reasons I like New Orleans in the 1 seed, and it's the depth. I think they're very deep. They have the potential to make moves as the season's going to go on. Yeah, I think it's super real. This team is just very legit. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I agree. I said earlier they're probably the deepest team in the league, along with the Celtics.
Yeah.
Willie Green has them playing great basketball on both ends. The sets he runs on offense to get Zion the ball. I wish Doc Rivers could take a note out of his book.
Yeah.
Like, please put Embiid in these positions to dominate the game. So yeah, I love what the Pelicans are doing, and this record is very real.
Yeah, I mean, this record is 100% real. The Pelicans are obviously a great team. I think they have great pieces, especially when you have Zion Williamson as kind of the locomotive engine of your team. You have Ingram, who's the scorer. You have CJ McCollum, the veteran, who could just get you mid-range buckets day to day. And then you just have great role players. I think that's one thing that the NBA is moving towards, and I think we talked about this before, Pete, with the Kevin Durant story with Kyrie a couple weeks back when they were struggling, and they're doing a lot better than they were. But I think depth and letting players like like a Herb Jones or players that come off the bench for them, like giving them minutes or giving them situations where they can actually do things is huge and critical for them. And that's why I think it's exciting to see the Pelicans roster and know that all of the guys that are on their roster could do something for this squad, no matter how much of the role. And that's something that's a credit to Willie Green. I mean, a lot of coaches I know probably would not have given a guy like Jose Alvarado a shot last year, like
Mhm,
in the
mhm.
playoffs, and giving him big spot minutes. Like a lot of coaches would have just said, "We're just going to stick to our guns, and that's really all we're going to do." But the fact that Willie Green gave Alvarado an opportunity to show what he can do proves to me that he is one of the better coaches out there in the league. And
Yeah.
someone that like trusts their guy. Like that's the one thing that I think a lot of coaches need to start doing a lot more. It's trusting the guys that they have in the roster to do things for them. Give a spark to somebody. I think that's the reason why I think Darvin Ham, even though a lot of people criticized him, I think he was a great hire is because he does that for the Lakers. Even though they need more shooters, and we'll talk about them later on in the
Oh, we will.
segment.
We'll talk about them. They're coming up.
Yeah, and so to me, it's like one of those things where I just feel like or even Missoula, like these coaches are giving some of these guys opportunities that more than likely other coaches wouldn't give them. If you think about coaches from the early 2000s, even to like the
Thibodeau.
2010s,
I was
Thibodeau,
gonna say Tibbs and Doc Rivers, guys
Tibbs
that
and
are
Doc-
still doing it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to me, that's where I'm like, okay, it's time to start giving guys opportunities. And again, not to go on a tangent about that topic, but this record is real. I'm excited for the Pelicans, and they could honestly be top 3 in the West.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say they're a top 4 seed, one way or the other. It would be pretty dramatic because, one last thing too, Bernie, to go on your point. I couldn't agree more about Willie Green. He proved it to me last season as just like, I don't know if anybody really remembers this. They started with like a horrific losing streak last season. Do you guys remember that?
Mhm.
They were like
Yeah.
0-10, I think.
Yeah.
And Willie Green just dug his heels in, and he's like, I believe in these guys. They're going to turn it around, and we as a unit are going to stick together. And he has instilled that in them from day one of him being their coach. And I think that reflects like their mentality as a team. They got a great one in terms of somebody that can stay with this team and grow with all their young players for a long time to come. I mean, you got to give your kudos to Willie Green and David Griffin, who I joke all the time. I thought David Griffin was like literally bottom GM of all time for a little stretch, and he turned it around. Whether or not he did it on accident, I have no idea, but he did it. Truly, this team turned around.
He just fell into a 1 seed. That'd be funny.
This New Orleans situation, going from Stan Van Gundy a couple seasons ago to where they're at now, is one of the best turnarounds in a couple years I've seen, maybe ever in the NBA. It's pretty wild. Let's move on. We're going to go all over the place. So we're going to go to the Eastern Conference now. This one, I've been looking forward to talking about this all week since our stream last week. I don't know if I've ever been proven correct so quickly. Karmic retribution. I called out the Atlanta Hawks last Sunday morning, and within hours, we get the reports of the dissension amongst Trae Young and Nate McMillan. It only took a couple hours after I said how little I enjoyed watching the Hawks, how awful their body language and chemistry looked, and here we are. Now, DeJounte Murray is out for 2 to 3 weeks with a high ankle sprain, I believe. Could be longer. Those ankle sprains are pretty pesky. They are 13-13 right now. Got the absolute brakes blown off of them by the Knicks a couple nights ago. They look not good. And I don't know about you guys. They lost to the Nets last night as well, or 2 nights ago, whenever that was.
Yeah.
I think this is about right. I think they're going to be like a 500 team for most of this season. Unless something drastic happens, they are a team that could definitely make moves. But I think this is pretty real. I think it's representative of who they are mentally as a team. It is incredibly hard to win if your best player and your coach absolutely despise each other. I think we've seen that time and time again in the NBA. And by all the reports that have come out, even in the ensuing days since that article last Sunday, it sounds like, and I don't know if you guys heard Zach Lowe say this the other day, that's not the first time something like this has actually happened between Trae and Nate McMillan. It's actually just the first time it's gone public, which there's been a lot of leaks amongst this organization this season. We actually almost know everything that this team is doing somehow, right?
Yeah.
That's never really a good sign. If your organization is in that much chaos and there's that much seepage of information from places where it should not be coming out, That's a pretty bad sign. So yeah, I would say this is real. I think they're about a 500 team. Whether or not that stays that way really depends on if they make moves. Like if they were to go get a guy like Kuzma that they've expressed some interest in, I think that would actually really help them. But I still don't know if it puts them in like, they're going to start climbing up into the top 5 seeds. What do you guys think about the Hawks?
Yeah, I would say that this is about who they are. I had them as a 6 seed before the season, just
Mhm.
because I really don't like the DeJounte Trey pairing. There's no way to make that work because, they're both really talented players, but they both need the ball. And unless you stagger them correctly or, DeJounte magically turns into a 40% 3-point shooter,
Yeah.
then then it's always going to be tough to make those two work. And yeah, you're right, Pete. The whole leakage from the organization is insane. We shouldn't know what's going on 24/7. It's like somebody wants us to know that
Somebody
Trey
wants
is.
us to know.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it's like they're crying out for help almost. It's so funny. I would say that their only way to get better is trading John Collins, trading DeAndre Hunter, trading Bogey. Like they need to completely redo this team because they're not going to move Trey. Trey is their superstar. He puts people in seats. So that's as long as those guys are on the team, I don't think they're a real team because you already went in on DeJounte. You have to keep him. You gave up 3 first-round picks for him. It's the others that need to be corrected, and people like Hunter don't create off the ball or with the ball. People like Bogey can only create with the ball. And he doesn't play defense. It's a really hard dynamic for that team. So it's either they don't have enough defense or it's either they don't have enough offense and their bench is really poor.
It's really bad. Like
Yeah.
their bench is like kind of almost you wouldn't really know it's as bad as it is if you don't watch them. Because on paper, some of those guys are not necessarily bad players, but man, on a night-to-night basis, they
I was
are
gonna say,
awful.
yeah, like Jalen Johnson. I love the idea of Jalen Johnson. I think he deserves the minutes, but he'd be a better player on a team like the Magic where he's young and doesn't have expectations. But on the
Yeah.
Hawks, they can't afford his mess ups. So
Yeah, like him and AJ Griffin starting is really tough if you want to compete in the Eastern Conference.
I think
It's really hard.
Pete, you probably watched this game. Julius Randle dropped like what 37 and 17 on them the other night.
Dude, the Knicks, you would have thought the Knicks were one of the best teams in the league. How they murdered the Hawks. And
Oh my
mind
God.
you, it started really poorly. That was the game DeJounte got hurt. He literally got hurt on the first possession of the game. But as soon as he went out, there was nothing that team had in response to what the Knicks were going to do. Genuinely, it was shocking. Like you really would have thought the Knicks were like on par with the Bucks the way they played the Hawks the other night.
Oh my
Not true
God,
though. They're
that's
not.
terrible.
What about you, Bernie? What do you got to say for these Hawks, Bernie?
I think this is probably about right where they need to be. 500, maybe they could be a little below that. Just because I think, to me, it's like I don't think it's really the fits that are the problem. I just think it's it's just like going to work and you like hate the people that you work with. It's not a fun experience.
You're not gonna have a good day.
You're not gonna have a good day. Like maybe they chew gum loud and you're just like annoyed by the fact that
Chew gum loud. That's funny, Bernie.
or just like they talk about stuff and you're just like it's just time to be quiet. And I think that's probably what's going on. Like I think the rest of the team is really frustrated with the way that Trey Young has kind of had this attitude problem. What seems now it seems like this has been going on for a while now, even going back to the Lloyd Pierce situation.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the frustrating part for me is that Trey Young, obviously, I still rate him highly as a player, but he needs to fix the ego part of it because I think if he was able to do that, I think this team would be very good. And I just think that there's no cohesion, there's no like togetherness with this team. And when you have one person that's like far off, and then you have everyone else that's just kind of like what's going on, this team is gonna get screwed by the fact that Trey Young is kind of doing his own thing and not really helping out the team. And so I think that's probably about right. Frustrated with the way that this Hawks team has been playing because I think the only thing you could probably say is obviously the classic trade John Collins, which I think is probably what's going to happen at some point. But I like the way that this roster is constructed. It's just the fact that egos are starting to get in the way now, and that's the reason why they've been 3-7 in the last 10 games.
Very true, and I had to pull this up just to make sure I was fact checking myself because I thought I knew this. I was correct. Where do you think this team ranks in terms of three point percentage amongst all teams per game? What's their average 3 point?
They're probably like
effect?
27th in the league.
Brad, what about you?
26, somewhere near
29th.
the.
They
Oh
are
my gosh.
they are barely above the Los
Lakers?
Angeles Lakers, just
Oh, yeah.
barely. They're tied with the Charlotte Hornets and right just a hair above the Los Angeles Lakers.
Jeez.
You have Trae Young, you have DeJounte Murray, and mind you, DeJounte Murray not a very good 3 point shooter, but all things considered, not a team that you would expect to be bottom of the league, literally in 3 point percentage. But they are. It's just that is what this team has been this year. Can't get open looks on anything, and I will say it again. This is my last thing for them. This is this team's destiny as long as Trae does not evolve as a player. If he continues to not do anything at all off ball, they're hard capped as a first round, second round exit. Even if they upgrade, that's just what it is with this team. I can't believe it any other way. If you have that poor of a defender in Trae, and he brings so little to the offense of the other players on the court when he doesn't have the ball, it is very limiting in terms of competing with teams like the Celtics that are just moving all the time, tiring you out. That's hard to compete with. But yeah, don't like it one bit. Let's move on. Next team. Let's go to the Western Conference, guys. Let's talk about one of my favorite teams to watch this season, the Sacramento Kings. They're 14-10. The 5 seed in the West as of right now. They're actually just a hair above the Portland Trailblazers. They have less losses than the Portland Trailblazers at the moment. Man, this one's really tough. I think this is right. I am not sure they can hang on to the 5 seed per se, but I think they're right around where they're going to end up shaking out in terms of record. I think they're gonna push for like maybe 50 wins, high 40s. Which if you are a Sacramento Kings fan, you have got to be jumping through the ceiling of your house excited. But this team is so fun to watch. Again, it's not necessarily the same thing as New Orleans or the Celtics, but they're so deep. I love so many of their players. I love their bench unit. Like when they send out Davion Mitchell and who's the other guard? In Malik Monk. I think those two, like as their bench unit, that's such a fun dynamic to have in terms of defense and some of the scoring stuff they can do. They're a really fun team to watch, guys. I know I always talk about them, but I think the record is pretty representative of how good they are. What do you guys think about the Kings?
Yeah, I'd agree. I don't think they can hold on to the 5 seed. I think they probably end somewhere in the 7 seed. But Mike Brown has them playing good basketball. I don't know if you guys saw that clip of him like coaching Terrence Davis, pointing out where he wanted him to take a charge on a drive from, I can't remember which player it was, but the very next possession, that player makes the same drive off of a pick and roll, and Terrence Davis is there to take the charge, and Mike Brown like loses his mind, like, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. And that's good coaching. That's what makes them a better team. They're playing on both sides of the ball. They're responsive to their coach. They all like each other, which is something that's underrated. I think we didn't talk about the Pelicans. That team loves each other,
Yep.
And the Hawks are the complete opposite of that. But yeah, the Kings, they look real. De'Aaron Fox is having his best year. That looks like he's going to be an all-star this year. Sabonis could even be an all-star in the West. All-star selections are going to be tough this year in both conferences.
Very tough.
Yeah. They're real. I love the Kings. They're a super fun team to watch. High-powered offense. Malik Monk for 6th man of the year also. I picked him up in fantasy, so I have to give him that shout out.
Dude, he's been so good. He has been so good. I mean, the Lakers have to be absolutely kicking themselves.
Yeah.
What about you, Bernie? How you feel about the Kings?
I think for me, this is I'm just gonna burst the bubble just a little bit. I think that they're a good team, but I still think that they are a team that still needs an additional piece in order for them to really maintain this, I would say, 5 through 10 range of staying in there. I think they could maybe challenge for 9 and 10 because I think the Utah Jazz are going to falter off at some point. I think.
You think the Clippers are going to overtake them? I think that's pretty tough.
I think the Clippers will overtake them because either Paul George or Kawhi Leonard will come back at some point. Not sure when. They're still on their vacation. They'll come back at some point. But the problem is that the Sacramento Kings are, they're towards the bottom end of rebounding. And to me, I feel like rebounding is huge because those are what leads to extra possessions.
Yeah.
And if you don't have those extra possessions, then I think it's going to be a huge issue. And, you clearly can see the Sacramento Kings in the last couple games are kind of at the 500 level, close to it at least, 6-4. Maybe one game above in the last 10. And they also give up a lot of points to the other team. And
they do.
And so I understand you have Davion Mitchell, he's a great stopper, but at the same time, my concern is that because you have one guy and the rest of your guys can't really defend, that's going to come to bite you in the butt at some point. These teams like the Clippers are going to probably beat them a couple times. I think the Portland Trailblazers, even, who I'm not really that high on, but they could beat them. And then of course, you got the Warriors. They'll probably come back at some point. They'll snap back to reality at some point. And then you either have the Minnesota Timberwolves or the Dallas Mavericks, depending on what happens there. I think they can overtake them easily.
See, I think that's pretty tough. I think those teams are trash, but we'll talk about them in a minute.
And so to me, I think it's an issue or a concern of, do they have enough to get through an 82 game regular season? And I don't think that they do. Right now, I feel like they're sprinting this marathon instead of pacing themselves. And I think that's going to be a thing that catches up to the Sacramento Kings at some point during the season.
I think that's a pretty valid point. It could be definitely one of those scenarios where, you're definitely outpacing how well you're going to keep up later on in the season, because I do think, like, I agree with you, Bernie. There's a couple teams in the West. I think I'd be pretty surprised if the Warriors don't overtake them relatively shortly. But I don't know. There's a lot of those teams below them that I'm not so sure about. Let's move on though. Let's get off the Kings. We talk about them way too much. Let's talk about a team we hardly ever speak about this season. But I think they're in an interesting kind of crossroads. That is the Toronto Raptors. They are 13-13. 7.5 games behind the first seed. I think they're in a really interesting spot because this is a team that, Bernie, this is your favorite word I use. This is the timeline team in terms of what are they, what's their plan long term? They have a lot of young players, but they also have some guys that are, in their late 20s. And one of them, a big name player, is Fred VanVleet, been playing awful this season, has been just atrocious as far as his normal standard is concerned.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard some rumblings that this is a team that people are keeping an eye on in terms of, are they going to start trading some pieces away and commit to the youth movement? I would not be surprised if that happened. It would take a pretty special offer for it to happen. I'm really not sure what the answer is with this team. So I'll probably let you guys take the lead, and I'll just piggyback off of whatever you guys say. Be copycat bandwagon opinion on the Toronto Raptors. Their biggest thing that I would make an excuse for them for it is Pascal Siakam has been injured for a big bulk of this season. He's back now. He's been playing incredibly well when he's healthy. Like, one of the most talked about, underrated superstars in the league is Pascal Siakam. I'm a huge fan of him. But I would be very interesting to see if somebody was calling them up about him. Scotty Barnes is 20. This is a really deep draft. I mean, maybe this is the season Masai Ujiri just says, hey, that we don't have it long term right now. Let's get off of VanVleet. Let's get off of Siakam, get some assets back in return, and see what we can build in the next couple years. I would not be surprised by that. So actually, I'm going to lean. I think they're actually going to get a little worse as this season goes on, but because they're going to trade some of their players away. What do you guys think about Toronto?
Bernie, I'll take it.
Sure. I think that this is going to be a team that's probably going to fall back a little bit. I agree with you in that sense, P. I mean, there's just no one on this team right now, in my personal opinion, where I say yes, you can go to this guy and he will do something. I think, maybe OG, maybe Pascal, but for the most part, there's not that superstar that they have on their team. They have a team of really good players, and obviously Nick Nurse, being a great coach that he is, will coach this team up to probably doing a lot better than what it should do. But at the same time, I think the problem for this Toronto Raptors team is they, without their best guys, I love Fred VanVleet, but at the same time, he's not going to be a guy that game changes a team that doesn't have a superstar. If they have a superstar, Fred VanVleet, of course, changes the game for this team. But without that superstar, without that star player, they're kind of just middle of the road when it comes to scoring, middle of the road when it comes to assists. Actually, they're worse in assists, but they rebound the ball pretty well. And offensive rebounding is key for them because it creates those extra possessions for them. But in terms of just putting the ball in the basket, they clearly struggle with that. And so I think they're going to be a little bit worse than what they are right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you guys. I think they're gonna be a little worse just because, Masai kind of built a team full of a bunch of clones. It's like they all do the same things. Really, their only half-court creator is Fred, and he's having a really bad year, so it reflects on their record. They're losing games that they shouldn't lose. I would say that they should probably move someone like Fred just because I've never really been high on Fred to begin with. I'm not big on short shot chuckers, but he's a good player and the team could definitely use him. And someone like Masai would probably hop on that. I think that they've been kind of middle of the road for a couple years now, even dating back to the bubble when they had Lowry and OG and Siakam, all these guys, and they freed Lowry and let him go. And all they got back in return was Precious and I think a pick. And so
he hasn't played at all this season, has he? He's been hurt.
He's hurt. Yeah. But even when he was playing, he wasn't. He showed some improvement. But it's the tale of two timelines. Like, are you winning? Are you trying to develop? What's going on here? I was really shocked that they didn't trade OG actually to the Blazers. I think the Blazers had a good offer for them, a couple picks and a player.
They should have done that.
Yeah, and OG, he's having a good season, making his case for all defense. But what's the plan here? Are you guys trying to win? Or you've had OG for 6 years now, something like that.
OG is he's the preeminent. This is the jump guy this season. He's every single season.
Year. Yeah,
I think we know that this is probably just who this guy is. He's a very good role player. That's it.
Exactly. So it's time to move on. Time to put him on a winning team or a team where he can contribute more. I would, especially in this draft, I would go all in on the young guys. You have Scotty, who has Rookie of the Year, a little undeservingly, but whatever.
100%, Brad. You literally took the words out of my mouth. I love Scotty Barnes. If this season reflects anything, it's that Evan Mobley should have been Rookie of the Year last season, and it's 100%. Not even a question. 100%. Not even a question. I can't believe he didn't win it last year, but it is a narrative award as well as the MVP, and that's what was going on last season. But yeah, they should hard commit. I agree. Hard commit. Send some of their dudes. I would send Siakam. I love Siakam, but there are teams that could really use him right now, and he would show how good he is in a place that can really compete at the moment.
And they would get so much back for him.
They really could. They really could. VanVleet would be a great guy to send somewhere like Philly. Philly could desperately use VanVleet. But yeah, they should send guys. If I had a dream for Toronto, if I could do anything for this squad, they should tank the holy hell out of the season and end up with the Thompson twins. Mm-hmm. You're in Toronto. It's very, very hard to bring people to Toronto other than drafting them. Mm-hmm. The Kawhi situation is a huge exception. They traded everything for him besides the crucial parts. You need to build through the draft. You have Scotty Barnes. He's your point forward. Go get two incredible players who you can have with him for the next 10 years. Go do everything you can to go get somebody like that. They have to commit to something one way or the other.
Didn't they just extend Gary Trent?
They did, but I already heard they're trying to move him too.
Yeah, I mean, he's coming off the bench now, which is
somebody will probably trade for him because I do think he's not
Lakers.
He's not that terrible.
The Lakers could use him.
They could definitely. The Lakers could use just about anybody, but
Lakers need shooters, man. I mean,
and he's not a bad defender either. So, I would take Gary Trent somewhere else. They should just start shipping stuff off. Commit. Let Scotty Barnes be the guy. But he's definitely come back to earth a little bit this season in terms of You know, if anybody's having a little bit of a sophomore slump, it's probably him. But even then,
That's definitely him.
he's not even been that bad. It's just it's not what you would hope for the guy that was rookie of the year last year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's move back to the Western Conference here. Let's talk about a team that I don't think I've been as wrong about anything in my life, let alone basketball. The Minnesota Timberwolves. This team is awful, guys. They are 13-13, 4.5 games out of the first seed, which is just I mean, that's really wild. That's really weird. The West is so tight right now, but I actually think that record is better than they actually are. I don't think they're 13-13 caliber. I think they're really atrocious most nights. There is no team that has worse chemistry than them. The Hawks want to compete, but I think Timberwolves are still ahead of them in the chemistry Olympics in terms of bad chemistry. I hate this team. I really do. I don't even know what they can do because they gave so much away for Rudy. Cat is hurt. Anthony Edwards looks miserable playing with Rudy Gobert. Man, I've been thinking about this. I think that they are a very close comparison, and it's not necessarily, hear me out here, I don't think it reflects how they blew it up in terms of screwing the situation up, but I do think in a lot of ways this situation mirrors what Brooklyn did after that last Kenny Atkinson season, right? They had this great chemistry, overperformed with some young dudes, and showed up to the playoffs and gave Memphis a really like tough run for their money. And then they said, "Oh, we're right there. Let's hard commit to this and then get rid of some of the pieces that added that mentality to our team." And now they've taken 5 steps back. And they are in a tough situation in terms of getting any of those steps back. Going back forward, I don't think is going to happen for them anytime soon. So yeah, I think honestly they're going to get even worse as the season goes on, unless Cat comes back fully healthy and looks like the guy people want him to be. That's the only way forward for this team. But even then, their chemistry, what they do on the court night to night in terms of running actions and sets for all their players, it is just atrocious to watch most nights. So I don't like anything about it. What do you guys think about Minnesota?
Yeah, they tricked me. I had them as a 3rd seed coming in. I thought they would win a bunch of games, be good at defense. They're terrible at transition defense. They've been better in the half court recently in the past week or so. I think they're like top 5 in the half court. But, that's because they're missing Cat. As soon as Cat comes back, there goes their half court defense because he can't guard a parked car. Yeah.
Literally.
I hate this team. I hate that D'Lo is the starting point guard. I hate the Cat and Rudy Gobert fit. I don't think that it's the same thing as the Hawks. You're either sacrificing offense for defense or defense for offense. And most nights they're not even trying on defense, especially when Cat's playing. I think Kyle Anderson has done a way better job at the power forward position, but that's the type of player he is, I also don't like Chris Finch's rotations. Like, I know they're a terrible team, and so I stopped watching a lot of them, honestly. But in the games I was watching, Chris Finch, his rotations are so weird because Jalen Noel has been, like their bench scorer. But then you have guys like Austin Rivers playing a bunch of minutes. You have guys like, what's his name? I can't even. Bryn Forbes. Bryn Forbes takes up some minutes. God. Yeah.
Guys, Bryn Forbes.
He shouldn't even be on the court most nights. So this team is they're worse than the Lakers, honestly. Their record is better, but they're worse than the Lakers as a product.
The Lakers. They definitely are.
Yeah.
Like the best version of this Timberwolves team it's honestly nowhere even near even the best version of the Lakers team. Like if they were both playing their best game, they're getting smoked by this Lakers team, which I think tells you all you need to know about the Timberwolves right now.
I can't believe they traded Vando. I really thought they had like a special defensive front court with Vando and Jaden McDaniels. Then they treated Vando like he didn't matter. It's crazy.
Shocking. I would have kept Vanderbilt over McDaniels personally. I really don't even understand why they didn't value Vanderbilt. I don't get it at all. He's so good.
Yeah.
He was an afterthought in that trade. Bernie, what about you?
I mean, this thing has been a complete disaster for the Timberwolves. I mean, I think there's a lot of stuff that needs to happen for this team. I think for one, I think Anthony Edwards needs to develop more as a player. I feel like he's kind of either been staying the same or has gotten a little bit worse than what he was
Yes.
last year.
He won't pass the ball.
That's the problem. Like, he's got to learn to pass the ball because there's opportunities. Like, whatever you think about Rudy Gobert, it is what it is. But there's opportunities for him to, again, my frustration, and I saw a video about this, is that there's times where Anthony Edwards will drive the baseline, keep a Steve Nash dribble, meaning that he'll continue to dribble instead of picking it up when he drives in the lane, to draw that big to come with him, and it's a wide open alley-oop for Rudy Gobert to go dunk it, but he just doesn't throw it. And so to me, that's like an issue for me, is like, you need to be able to pass the ball. Two, I just think like D'Angelo Russell, it's time to move on from him.
Dude, he honestly might not belong in the NBA. I'll be that guy. I'll be really harsh. He's honestly,
that's rough.
He is one of the worst players I watch on a night in, night out basis. I just don't even understand the mentality of keeping him in your starting lineup. Like, it's not going to turn around. But even then, he's such a negative on the court in almost every way that I don't even think he's a good bench player. Like, in a second unit, I don't see what he adds to you. It hurts me to say. I liked D'Angelo Russell so much when he was in Brooklyn. I was huge on him. I thought he was going to be an incredible NBA player. I'm beyond disappointed with that guy. I just don't see any improvement in his game ever. And I really am starting to worry about Anthony Edwards. You guys know my love affair with Anthony Edwards. I'm a huge fan of him. This season has been devastatingly bad if you're holding a ton of Anthony Edwards stock. Like, he looks like he has the mentality of like an AAU player. Like, he is not playing in a way that is conducive to growth as an NBA player, but also, like, I hate to say this because I really like him. He's just playing so immature. Like, the way he's interacting with his teammates, whether or not they put him in the best position to succeed, almost doesn't matter. You're still 20 or 21. Like, you do have to listen to somebody, Yeah. And I would start to get really worried that he's going to end up not reaching his potential if they don't start to get some veteran leadership in the locker room that can keep him, focused and get him on track, man. It's a bummer to watch.
They should have got Tyus Jones. Tyus Jones would have been the perfect bet for him.
Yeah,
teach him how to pass.
Out right now.
I was surprised they fumbled that signing because he was a former Timberwolf. They should have just thrown the bag at him instead of having D'Lo be your PG. They believed in D'Lo, which is crazy. Fire everybody.
Crazy. It's absolutely crazy, man. It's the team that none of what they've done makes any sense, like, on almost any level. So yeah, they're a travesty. I honestly don't think they can really do anything to fix their situation. They're a team I would strongly, if I was them, consider. I don't know how they would pull this off, but I would try and go get somebody like DeRozan. And I know whatever you think about DeRozan, it's almost more just what he brings in terms of just some veteran leadership, keeping people maybe a little bit more accountable. And I don't necessarily know if that's all his game, but I think he's close to available in a position they could use, and they could just use some scoring in general. Something. They need anything they can get. I don't like it. Let's get off them. They're frustrating as hell. Let's go back to the East real quick. Let's talk about a team that's actually kind of fluctuated a little bit in and out. I got you, Bernie. Washington Wizards. I feel like they have continuously kind of gone up and down in a weird way. Like, they were overperforming for the first little stretch of the season, then they had a dip. I still think, and I hear people talk about them as if they're, this surprising, like, wow, they're pretty good. And a lot of that has to do with the reemergence of Kristaps Porzingis, the original unicorn, KP himself. They're 11-16, 10 games out of the first seed, but they're the 12 seed. It's still so tight right there. They're only a couple games behind Atlanta for the 9 seed. I really don't like the Wizards team, but it would really depend on what direction they decide to go in terms of, are they going to hold on to guys like Kuzma? Are they going to hold on to Bradley Beal? If they keep their roster the way it is right now and Kristaps Porzingis continues to play the way he is, I actually think they might make it to the play-in game. But I don't know, man. I don't think they're very good. I don't really like this team in really any way, shape, or form. And if they have any brains, they have to realize like there's not much better than this that they can get out of this team, which should tell them all they need to know. Like you're basically seeing the best version of what you have, and it's still not very good. So I would get off of all this. And last thing for them too is KP. Based on what we've seen from him his whole career, there's almost no way this carries on. Like he's either going to get hurt or he's just going to go on a slump for like 2 straight months. It's one of those two things. And I don't know. It's about right. 11 and 16, 12th seed. I think that's really pretty accurate for what they are.
Yeah,
definitely. The teams beneath them are like, even the worst in the league. So I don't even think yeah.
I honestly think if Orlando was fully healthy, I honestly still might think they're better than Washington. But yeah, they're really the 3 like worst teams in the league. Most nights are below them.
True. Yeah, the Magic are somehow never healthy. Apparently, Jonathan Isaac is making a return, but
yes, my guy.
I enjoy him. We'll see if he's the same player.
2K Defensive Player of the Year extraordinaire.
Every year.
In any 2K game for the last like 5 years, he's Defensive Player of the Year all the time.
Back to the Wizards. I was gonna say they should totally sell on Kuz, and I think they should sell him to the Cavs so the Cavs can become contenders. I think Kuz on the Cavs is everything they need, like that big wing who can play defense.
I actually haven't thought about that one.
He would be perfect for them. Yeah.
I like the Cavs though. I can't lie, guys. I don't believe it. I think this is a flash in the pan from Kuzma. I can't help it.
Really?
Guys. I can't help it. There's something about him.
Does Laker Kuzma scare you? Is that why?
It's not even Lakers Kuzma. It's just Kuzma. There's something about him that I just can't fully get behind. And it's not personality, anything like that. It's just he has been very good this season. I'm not trying to take anything away from him. I think like the Suns they need to go get him if they want to stay where they're at. Go get Kuzma. He would be so helpful to them. Him on a team like at Atlanta, I think that would be awful. That would be awful for Atlanta. And I said earlier they're talking about trying to get him, but like I think chemistry-wise, you got to have a strong backbone in terms of other leaders on the team. I don't necessarily buy him as like one of your 3 best players, personally.
I would agree there. Yeah. He'd probably also never see the ball with Trey and DeJounte, ball hogging.
Can you imagine the chemistry of that team? Like
it would be abysmal.
It's already abysmal. It would be nightmare fuel if they added Kuzma into that. What do you think about the Wizards, Bernie?
They're the definition of mid. I think they're probably it's frustrating to watch them because I think of all just because we've talked about them so many times before in the past, like their strategy or their plan or whatever they are deciding to do, it seems to never work. It seems to just let's take the best player, but not really the best fit for us as a team. I'm sure they missed out on a couple of players that if I looked at their history, I'm sure they missed out on some key guys. But I just think the Wizards right now are in this place where they obviously re-signed Bradley Beal, and I just don't think they know what to do right now. They seem to be like, okay, everything's fine, the status quo is good. But for me personally, like the Wizards right now are, one of the most middle of the road teams you could ever see in the NBA. Johnny Davis is proving to just be a G League player at this point.
Not even necessarily in the G League. He's awful. I feel bad for him.
You got Rui Hachimura, who you're deciding whether or not to keep him.
Free Rui, please.
You got Corey Kispert again, kind of just a 3-point shooter that, they drafted high, and we'll see what happens with him. Obviously, Kyle Kuzma's balling out right now, and, I do like myself some Kyle Kuzma. I just think for him, what it's going to come down to is just, like you said, like, do the Cavs go get him? Do the Phoenix Suns go get him? Like, there's going to be one of those playoff teams that's going to want Kyle Kuzma's services. And I'm hoping that they do deliver in that sense. But at the end of the day, I think this team is they're just okay with being just okay. Like, there's no one out here where I'm like, yes, this is who they should get. This person's going to help them to get better. They continuously draft the same positions, hoping that something will happen, and it continues to not happen for them. And so, until they decide to really go full rebuild or just say, let's just try to be the best version of ourselves, that is when the Wizards are going to be better. But I think that they're actually a little bit worse than what their record shows, to be honest with you. And it's just
I
and,
agree with you.
and it's just because they just have better players than the Hornets, the Magic at this current point, right, with the injuries and whatnot, and then obviously the Detroit Pistons without Cade Cunningham. And so, I just think that the Wizards are lucky that they have better players in all the positions. And so right now they just need to figure out what's going to be the best move for them moving forward. Is it to trade away your kind of key pieces that you have, some nice role players to playoff contending teams for picks and stuff like that? Or would it make sense for them to just kind of go full send with like saying, hey, we're going to go around Rui, we're going to go around Kispert, we're going to go around Porzingis, we're going to go around Kuzma, and those are going to be our starting four, and let's just go out there and ball out. But, until they decide to really commit to something, they're just going to be in mediocrity, or even actually worse than mediocrity. They're just going to be at the bottom.
Yeah, they're terrible. They're a team. I was thinking they should honestly call Golden State and try and send KP for some of their young dudes. I think that benefits both squads. If KP is out in Golden State, I think that would be a pretty solid fit for everybody involved. They wouldn't need to use him like every single night, save him for the playoffs. But they could get take some flyers. Like, this is the definition of a team that needs to start being like the island of misfit toys. Go get young players that haven't worked out other places and just hope you hit on a few of them. Like, try and get Wiseman, take Kuminga or Moody, one of the two. You can't get all three of those guys in a pick and see what happens. See what you have from it, but don't just stay middling here. Because I mean, I hated the Bradley Beal contract when they did it. I hate it even more now. I don't think he's anywhere near worth that amount of money. He's one of the ultimate good stats, bad team kind of guys, in my opinion, right now in the league. But there are teams that would still give you a ton for him, relatively speaking. You need to do it. And I would say if you're Washington, I mean, that Lakers offer is starting to look really nice, because if you think of what the Lakers are going to be in 2027 and imagine that Beal is going to be their only good player, those picks are going to be very good if that's what you send them for Beal. So I would start looking to send all those dudes. Just be really young and really bad and hope for the best, because it ain't going to get much better than this. Let's do two more teams real quick, guys. Let's go back to the West, and let's talk about... We're going to talk about Oklahoma City. We're just going to do it. We're going to do it right now, because this team, Bernie, I'm holding your feet to the fire. I still hate everything about Oklahoma City. I hate it, other than Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Put this kid on a good team and let him cook, because they have this guy Stockholm syndrome out of his mind in Oklahoma City. All right, they're 11-15. They're one of the 4 worst teams in the West. They've actually outperformed some expectations so far this season, just based on pure MVP caliber performances from Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. We even had Shai out in the news this week saying he believes in the Thunder's rebuild.
I was going to say that.
How do you believe it? How do you believe it? Do you believe it truly, Bernie? Do you believe that this is a rebuild in the making?
I mean, I believe so. I mean, I think that they have a plan in place. I mean, like I said, they need to decide right now whether or not, like, if they have the picks to get Victor Wembanyama, then yeah, go get that. But if they don't have the picks, I mean, look to just package that and get a superstar, because I just think that that's kind of what they need at this current point. Again, I just think I think that they're fine. I think they're right where they need to be at right now. They don't need to be super good right now. I mean, look, they're only like 2 or 3 games out from like the 10 seed, which is a play-in team. Like
they're not that far.
They're in the mix. They're still in the mix. I think what Shai Gilgeous is saying is that he sees the improvement in the team, and he kind of sees the vision of where the team is going. And right now they're looking like they're going in the right direction. I mean, they're going in a better direction than the Houston Rockets or the San Antonio Spurs, which a lot of people thought that that's where they were going to be at. So for me, I think that this is a good direction for the Oklahoma City Thunder at this current stage. I know that we're only just a quarter of the season in, but I'm liking what I'm seeing from them. Again, am I expecting them to be a juggernaut in the West? No, but I am expecting them to be a lot better moving forward when it comes to just what they're trying to do, which is build around Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, see what you get from Chet Holmgren. I love the Williams kid from Santa
Caleb
Clara.
Williams
He's
is
been
awesome.
balling out, and so like I think they have pieces, man. I just think we just need to see how patient the Thunder are in terms of, are they willing to give up everything? Like, let's say, you don't get Victor Wembanyama. Are they willing to give up all that stuff to get a superstar? Are they willing to do that? And that's the biggest question that I think we're going to find out this next offseason.
Yeah. What about you, Brad? Let me hear it.
Yeah, I mean, I think their record is worse than what they are just because they're, purposely tanking. Mark Daignault runs some insane lineups out there sometimes. Darius Bazley has been out of the rotation. Like, I got an alert on my phone yesterday that was like, per Coach Daignault, Darius Bazley will be back in the rotation. Like, I don't know if he got a call from the owner or something, or boss move, like put Darius Bazley back in the rotation. But Bazley isn't a bad player. He's someone that should have never been out of the rotation to begin with if you want to win games. But like, there's just no real structure there. They are missing Chet, so obviously that's going to hurt their record because he was number 2 pick. He was going to make a difference. I do think that SGA does see the vision. You get Chet back next year, you draft whoever you draft this year, and they would have a solid team. They'll probably have a good big three of, hopefully Wemby, SGA, and Chet, which would look insane. So you just got to be a little patient with them. They have all the picks, and if the draft doesn't work out, they can always send all those picks and get maybe a Bradley Beal, hopefully not, or somebody else.
Yeah, man, I hate this team. I can't lie.
He's not coming to the Knicks.
Honestly, I don't even care. I don't even want him to go to the Knicks because he's going to get wasted there too. I want him to go somewhere good. Like, he should go to Toronto. If there was a perfect scenario for everyone involved, he would go to Toronto.
And he is Canadian. That'd be perfect. Wow.
It would be a great fit for everybody involved. They would take a huge leap up in Toronto. I almost said Sacramento. They would take a huge leap up, and he would get to ball out on an actual good team with a good coach. No offense, Mark Daignault. He might not be a bad coach. We have no idea because he might as well.
Terrible coach.
He might as well be the He's Brett Brown 2022. He's Brett Brown. We have no clue if he's good. He's most likely terrible, but he's going to get to ride it out because it's the process 2.0, right? I don't know. I hate the mentality of we have picks. They've had picks for the last 10 years, and it still has never amounted to anything. So I have to see something more than this. I just don't like it, really. Because I would actually push back. I think their record is a little bit better than they are. Like, most nights, if they win a game, it's because Shea is literally putting up historically good numbers to win them games. Like, that is a crazy thing to have when he's 23 or 24 and he can't get on a team that is even close to up to snuff with how good of a player he is. Yeah. I don't know. It's just really frustrating to me. And there is nobody in the NBA that has more excuses be made for them than Sam Presti. There is nobody that gets more defense than him. And I don't know. Maybe I'm just a crazy person on an island. I'm like Tom Hanks in Castaway, and Sam Presti is my Wilson. And I don't know what's happening. Why this guy can have no success besides having one of the greatest players of all time, Kevin Durant, on his team alongside Russell Westbrook and James Harden. And he's eaten off that for 10 straight years. Mind-blowing to me. Nobody in the NBA gets more. Let's get away from them. I hate that team. Sam Presti drives me nuts. Indiana Pacers, last team we're going to talk about. We haven't talked about them nearly enough. We've talked about individual players on their team a couple different times. But they've been probably, besides, I don't know, are they the biggest surprise in the NBA this season, would you guys say? So far? Like based on what we thought they were going to be, are they the biggest surprise, or is there somebody more surprising than them? I think it's probably them. They're 14-13. They're the 6th seed as of right now in the Eastern Conference, half a game ahead of Toronto and the Knicks for that matter. I think the record is pretty real, but I don't think they're going to stay this way because I think they have to make moves. Miles Turner is probably going to walk this offseason if they don't trade him. He's a free agent expiring. I think Buddy Hield is also a free agent expiring too, isn't he?
I believe so.
I think they both are. I think they're both going to walk if you leave it. This team is really interesting, though, because they're in a great position for the future, unlike a lot of other teams that I think are going to end up getting worse as the season goes on. I still think they're in a great position because what we've seen from not only Halliburton's been all NBA caliber this season. He's been incredible. If he's not an all-star, I don't know what to say anymore. Benedict Mathurin, borderline 6th man of the year, borderline rookie of the year so far. But then you also have like the emergence of Aaron Nemhard. I mean, he looks legit. Like he actually looks like a real guy who's going to last in the NBA. He's like I heard a comp, somebody compared him to Brogdon actually in terms of an older player in the draft, didn't get a lot of respect coming out. And he's just showing his maturity as a basketball player. And I think that has been super reflected in his game so far.
Yeah.
And they have a lot to build on going forward in terms of their guards, especially. I think they need to make moves just to maximize the value of what you have before it goes away for free. But they could go either way because they could, I don't know, I don't think they're going to extend Turner, but they could go get not just assets in exchange for Turner. They could like turn him into a player long term. So I actually like Indiana a lot. Whether or not they stay at the 6, I think isn't reflective of how good things look for them going forward. What do you guys think about Indiana?
Yeah, I think this is who they are. I mean, Drunk said in the chat, Rick Carlisle with some decent players, the worst things can go is good. I actually have to take back my Rick Carlisle slander and give him his flowers because, yeah, he has that team playing really well on both ends. This is a separate topic, but it actually shows to me that the Luka ball that was going on in Dallas is a big product of Luka himself because Rick was, he went to the Pacers and they moved the ball. Everybody touches it. They all play defense. They're on a chain. That team likes each other too. Like the team chemistry is on point with that team.
Yeah. They haven't even had Duarte either, and they need him.
Yeah, like, they haven't even had Duarte. Wow. Yeah, exactly. He was a starter too. Yeah.
Yeah, he hasn't. I don't think he's played 1 minute this season. I think he's been out the whole year.
I think he got hurt in like the first game.
Was it the first game? Okay.
Yeah, it was a bad.
I haven't watched him play.
Yeah. Yeah, this team is, they obviously have to make moves. Otherwise, they're going to lose Turner for nothing. And yeah, I think even extending him would be hard since, he's been in trade talks his whole career there. And I just think that bridge is burned and he's kind of just balling out just to ball out so he can be moved.
Yeah, I mean, he's literally asking to get traded.
Yeah, exactly. He's literally saying, like, Lakers going on podcasts and telling teams to trade for him. Yeah. So they're a good team. They are fun to watch too. Like I enjoy watching them. Nemhard has been a revelation. They have 2 Halliburtons, which is insane.
It's nuts, man. It's really nuts. And they have baby Dwayne Wade. I mean, whether or not he ends up being Dwayne Wade, Benedict Mathurin is legit.
Facts, Benedict, and he's coming off the bench. So I actually enjoy the Pacers. That team is real. This record is real.
Yeah, I mean, this kind of just goes to show you when it comes to the Pacers. Like, I think the Pacers are awesome, but also just kind of shows you the disappointment in some other teams as well. I mean, you think about the Toronto Raptors, you think about the Miami Heat, you think about the Chicago Bulls. Like, I know there's a lot of teams that we're not going to be able to talk about, unfortunately, but those are teams that are disappointing because they definitely should be playing a lot better than they do. But that's nothing to take away from the Indiana Pacers. Nemhard, obviously from the Gonzaga area, like he played tremendously well. Like he has a veteran leadership about him that's actually kind of insane, thinking about how still a rookie in this league, but just like playing to the standard that I think Rick Carlisle loves. I mean, he kind of plays with the poise and the pace that like the Pacers just need out there. Especially with Halliburton out when he was out, and obviously he had that crazy game in Golden State. But I think that type of play is sustainable for Nemhard. Just in terms of like being that leadership. I think you talked about it, Pete, like that Brogdon for the team. Like he has that Brogdon in him.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
He's a hell
obviously,
of a defender too. I didn't think he was. I knew he was a decent defender. He's like legitimately a very,
He's
very good
strong
defender.
too.
yeah,
He's
He
like
is.
a 6'4" and strong.
Yeah, he's a high end defender.
yeah. And this also goes to my other point. I understand the Sacramento Kings are doing well, but this is why you don't get rid of Tyrese Halliburton. Like
Yeah.
he is balling out
Mhm.
at an insane level right now. And I'm sorry, like I know De'Aaron Fox is having one of his better seasons, but Tyrese Halliburton is going to be way better than him in the next year or two.
In
I
the
don't
long
think.
run, probably. I would still say that trade is one of the very few that I think probably is a win for both teams. I still don't think they should have traded Halliburton, but if you're going to trade a guy that's that good, it worked out all right. Sabonis has really been awesome for
Yeah,
Sacramento.
yeah, but I mean, Tyrese Halliburton is playing on a different level right now. I think
Yeah,
I think he's. I hope that he can get into an All Star game. We'll see if
he
he will.
has to. He has to. I'd be shocked if he didn't.
But
Does he still lead the league in assists?
I think so. Here, I'll find it.
yeah, don't fact check that. But I think the Pacers are obviously playing above their weight. That I think
He's
like
way
you
ahead. He's at 11 assists a game. Second place is 9.5 is Trey. So he's
He's got to be an all-star. Oh my goodness.
he's an assist and a half. And I think he has I think the best turnover ratio by like a large margin
yeah.
as
I mean,
well.
it just kind of goes to show you like what type of player he was. Like coming out of the draft, I know that a lot of people question the jump shot, but I loved him coming out of Iowa State. He looks like he
Mhm.
looked like a really solid player, and it was like a tall point guard. Again, I might have a bias for tall point guards. That's just me. But I think that he's kind of shown in these last couple, just this season that like he is a guy that should be someone you build around. And I think that the Indiana Pacers, like you said, Brad, it's unfortunate that Rick Carlisle's their coach, just in the sense that they're never going to be bad enough to be in that tanking position where they could get
Mhm.
someone special. I mean, obviously, the draft is open to everything. We've seen Curry go at what 9, and we've seen other players go a lot higher than they really, or a lot lower, or I guess higher than they should, or lower than they should be. But I think for me, like the Indiana Pacers, they're a solid team. I think they're a good team. And I think that this is real for the Pacers. I think that like you said, a lot of us thought, yeah, Pacers, they're probably going to be one of the 12 to 15 worst team in the East. But they've proven that, through that togetherness, through that defensive rotations that they've been doing, they care about one another. I mean, it just kind of goes to show you that like Rick Carlisle and just more importantly, like the players like care about each other, they respect each other, and I think this is going to be one of those situations where the Pacers, this is going to be good for them, and I think that maybe there's a free agent out there for them to get at some point.
Maybe, yeah. It's a tough city, tough town to get big free agents in, but I do
Oof.
agree. Like, um, I can't see a universe in which there's many players that don't see Tyrese Halliburton and don't want to play with a guy like that. Like, that is the exact type of player you want to attach yourself to. If you're a
Yeah.
young, talented guy who's a good team player, Halliburton's your guy. Yeah, I can't lie. I mean, Halliburton, he's got to be in consideration to be like one of the 5, 10 best under 25 players in the league right now, and it's.
Does he
I
win
mean,
most improved?
at this point, I would say he's probably most improved as far as I'm concerned. It's a pretty big leap where he's at. I had Maxey before the season, but he might end up being hurt too long to end up getting the award. So, and I would still say Halliburton is showing out more than Maxey was when he was healthy.
Yeah.
But that's more a Philly situation than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty tough. Do we have time for anything else? Do we want to wrap it up here?
The only thing I want to just really mention, and I think we were going to mention it in the
Yeah.
latter segment, was the Phoenix Suns and just the whole stuff that they did. But before we do that, remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button if you're new to the channel for all the stuff that you missed or the stuff that we did today. Again, super fun talking to Pete and Brad about this Rate the Record. I think this is a great segment. Might be something we do a lot more in the future. I enjoyed it.
We do some maybe
for sure.
quarterly. Check it half season.
Yeah, do a quarterly grade check. You know, we're teachers. You know, got to do that grade check. And Pete's out here checking grades, and he's not liking what he's seeing from some teams.
Sam Presti, double F.
Double F.
Timberwolves get an F.
Timberwolves get an F.
They get an E. They don't even qualify for the normal.
They get a no credit. Credit, no credit.
Yeah,
no credit.
But let us know in the comment section down below. What do you guys make of all the stuff that we talked about here and Rate the Record? Want to know your guys' opinion in the comment section down below. So let us know what you guys think about Rate the Record and who deserves a high praise and who deserves the low praise. Let us know in the comment section down below. All right. So yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is just to talk really quick about the Phoenix Suns. You know, obviously we gave them praise the last couple of weeks because they played really well. You know, Chris Paul was out for a while. My issue, as Pete is fighting this cat right now.
Oh my gosh, she's killing me.
Just fighting this cat.
You're stuck.
But my biggest
I almost got my nipple ripped off. What the hell was that? All right, let's go. Sorry, guys.
This might have to be ad. This is not ad friendly. What the cat just did to Pete. But
mutilated.
The biggest concern, the biggest issue I have so far with this Phoenix Suns team is how fake I feel like they are. Fake toughness, and I know, I'm a big fan of CP3. I'm not gonna be upset, but I think this is the second time now that CP3 has done something like this, where he has gotten upset with somebody for showboating or for it's almost kind of like old school baseball, if you guys know that, like celebrating a home run. Like the old heads in baseball are like they'll charge you if you're celebrating home runs.
That's craziness. Yeah, that's a great comparison, Bernie.
This to me, it just screams old head basketball when it comes to CP3. And I love Chris Paul, one of my favorite players growing up, but just let Zion have his moment. There's no reason to get in confrontational with the Pelicans team. Like, just take your butt whooping and move on. And the fact that the Phoenix Suns cannot do that just kind of goes to show you the reason why they didn't win the championship the year they played against the Bucks, and why they lost to Luka Doncic in a really bad Mavs team.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and we'll obviously maybe we'll talk next week about this player, but I've been very disappointed in DeAndre Ayton those last couple of weeks.
Yeah. I go back and forth with him because I do think I don't know, man. Like there's parts of his game that I can't help but really like. Like I love how versatile he is as a defender, how big he is, but I think he's kind of a representative of their biggest problem, and I think that it comes down to mentality. Like they're a team that I think is such a weak mental organization in terms of the players they have. And same, Bernie, I love CP3. It pains me to say stuff like this, but I will keep the same energy with all the players regardless of how much I like them. CP3 is one of the pettiest tough guys in the NBA in terms of like if something goes wrong for him, like never forget, this is a guy that when he went back to LA led a group of players in an underground tunnel to go try and fight somebody after a game because he didn't like that's wild stuff that doesn't get talked about, but he did that. And this is something that he has a track record of doing. Like when things don't go right or the going gets tough, like they're going to take it out on other people. And I think if you run into a team that has a player who's so mentally tough that they're not going to back down from Phoenix, or just an organization that has the mentality of, we're not going to fold at all. Any of those types of teams or players are awful matchups for Phoenix. And it's going to come down to that anytime they're in a big game, because I cannot help but feel the same way about Devin Booker as I always have. And their whole team is representative of Devin Booker because he's their best player. Mm-hmm. They are mentally weak in big games. And if there is somebody on the other team that is asserting their dominance on them, they fold every time almost. Like, it really has never been proven otherwise. Giannis did it to them in the finals. They should have won those finals. Giannis asserted his will on them the whole series after the first few games, and he killed them. Luka destroyed them basically on his own last season in the playoffs last year. And I mean, Zion was murdering them the other night. Like, this is what's going to happen to them in big games unless they get somebody that's a tough mental person to change them. Like, they should go get, this is a weird fit. They won't do this. Phoenix, or we know how Chris Paul and Pat Bev are. They need players like Pat Bev who are tough dudes in terms of not taking anything from anybody. Because Chris Paul pretends to be that, but he's not really that. He never has been that. It's after the game when Chris Paul's going to say something to you.
Yeah, this Suns team, I call them the Phoenix frauds because they're
on fraud watch.
They are been on fraud watch. I can't stand. To be honest, like, Bernie, you're disappointed with Ayton, but I mean, we know Ayton doesn't like that team. He doesn't like the organization, the way they handled his contract. I don't blame him for, playing a little apathetic. Honestly, he doesn't want to be there, and I don't think he'll be there much longer. But my disappointment is with Booker. I don't think Booker went on that scoring tear when they were playing a bunch of bad teams and people wanted to throw him in the MVP conversation, but that's what he does. He pads his stats versus bad teams. He's just like, if Booker isn't scoring for you, what is he giving you on the floor? Like, in that Pelicans loss, I think he shot 3 of 15 or something like that, and he gave them nothing else. He's not giving you good defense. He's not giving you great playmaking. He's not giving you great leadership. Like Pete said, they're weak mentally. And it falls on Booker as the leader, as the franchise player, as the 2K cover player. Like, come on, bro, you got to lead your team.
Yeah, they're because I don't know. I think they're just a great. The best comp I would say for them is like the Atlanta Hawks with Mike Budenholzer, like 7-8 years ago. I think it was that long ago, where they were an incredible regular season every year just because of this continuity they would have and the level of players they had in terms of regular season games. They're going to get their stats. They're going to perform relatively well most games. But when it comes to anything of note, they're going to get smacked in the mouth. Like, it is just, that is who they are. It's the same with the Toronto team with Dwayne Casey when LeBron just owned them every year. And mind you, that was really doing that to them, but they were still like that in general. And this is kind of this era's version of those teams where they're going to beat all the bad teams really consistently, but they're so up in the air when it comes to any team of note. Like, I think they could beat the Warriors most nights, but if they were in the playoffs against the Warriors, it's a complete different story. Like, that team is going to have the mental edge by a large margin when it comes to playing these guys. And Chris Paul, I mean, I love Chris Paul, but I do truly think this is, I hate to say it. It's getting pretty close to over for him.
Yeah.
He really, the athleticism is just, it's so far from being enough for him that it's kind of, there's some nights it's a little sad to watch for me because I love CP3 so much, but it's painful. And it's hard to be that hard-nosed leader, the guy that he's been his whole career, when you just don't have it anymore. It's really, really hard for your guys to rally behind you when you're not that.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I just want to talk about them really quick because, obviously we didn't really mention them too much lately. We mentioned them lately, but we didn't really talk about the whole situation that happened. Obviously with that, and then also the Patrick Beverley push and all that stuff that happened. It's a very interesting situation, and it's really sad to see the fact that the Phoenix Suns, well, maybe not sad, but it's been kind of brewing for a while now that they're on fraud watch, and we'll see what happens, man. We will see what happens with this Phoenix Suns team. Let us know in the comment section down below what you guys think about that. But with that being said, that is going to do it here for the charge. I want to thank Pete and Brad for tuning in, or helping again on the channel and really talking about this stuff. I mean, it's been a fun and pleasurable experience.
Thank you for having us, bro.
Yeah, thanks for having us. My pleasure as always.
Yes. And if you guys are interested or want to know what you guys can do, Please remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. Hit that notification bell. Let people know about the charge and spread the news of what we're trying to talk about here. Again, we're trying to build a community here. I always talk about how big community is here on just the channel and even just in YouTube in general. Like just having a community where you can go to talk. And let us know if we got something right, if we got something wrong, and what your guys' opinion about this stuff is. We want to interact with the audience a little bit more. And so, leave stuff in the comment section. We love to hear you guys talk and say whether we're right or whether we're wrong. Yeah, that's going to do it here for the charge. Please remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. Like I said, remember we give you the latest NBA news and rumors and also basketball opinions. And for that, guys, we are signing out. Have a great rest of your Sunday afternoon, and we'll see everybody next week.